podcast. My name is Dr. Tim Teel. I am the Doc of Unlock, here to help you figure out how to unlock your way through navigating this big, weird world that we're living in. And I wanted to spend another week talking about the food that we eat, and then we'll get back to some of the other really fascinating healing topics and emotional modulation and spiritual stuff. But I really think that it deserves another week or so of starting the conversation about how we begin to unlock a life we love, establish flourishing good health and expansive well-being. Because I really do genuinely believe that right now, today, this day and age, we sit at an important juncture where we could have a massive leap forward in our entire civilization, our entire evolution as a species, or we could have a major setback, and things could go either way. I'm going to do everything that I can to help move things forward in an evolved way and help people move forward with understanding how they, by themselves, can experiment with some information. We're going to give you some information that you can experiment with today that I came across in my 20 years of working as a board certified ear, nose, and throat physician, helping people solve problems. And quite unfortunately, here's the really bad news, and everybody already knows it. So it's not like somebody's going to come burn down my house for saying it, but medicine's a little messed up. And for 20 years or more, the federal government has been saying we're going to have a physician shortage. And well, no offense to anybody in the government, but when was the last time the government ever was able to accurately predict the weather, much less what was going to happen in 20 years? And I would tell you that that I believe this physician shortage has been engineered for a very, very long time, and that some of the information that is coming out with increasing fervor, both inside and outside of medicine, has been known and suppressed for quite some time. However, information can only be suppressed for about so long before you start to lose your credibility for withholding it and holding it back, retarding that growth. And I kind of think that's where we're at in medicine and the rest of the world. Um, Everybody's getting smarter a whole lot faster, and so we're going to talk about some of the things that I experimented with in my practice to help people find flourishing good health. And it has absolutely nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with what it is that we're eating and putting in our bodies. And we talked about this last time. We started kind of opened the conversation about the things, the common foods that we're eating that are really making us very, very sick, and we don't even know it because it's a very slow, insidious process. But if you address these things as a physician, it oftentimes it can damage your career, and I'm one of those guys. In fact, one of the places where I worked, a very, very kind fellow gently tried to explain to me. He said, "Tim, you're a good doc. You're a really good doc and a nice guy." And he said, "You just don't seem to understand that that the way you're practicing right now, the way you're fixing problems that other people are being paid to manage, is hurting your practice, and your physician colleagues are sending your patients or sending their patients somewhere else, because when you fix problems that other people are being paid to manage, you're affecting their bottom line and you're affecting their cash flow." And we just stopped there. And I said, "You know what? I'm starting to realize that I'm in the wrong place, because when I signed up to go to medical school, I signed up to solve people's problems, relieve their suffering, help them find solutions to problems that were very vexing to them. They were a big problem, and they came to us. They spent their time and they spent their money so that I could provide them solutions, not just find a problem to manage." Okay. So, the information that I'm going to tell you today was part of the destruction of a good physician's career, but it spawned something entirely different and something much more flourishing and much more exciting, and that is uh, our understanding of many, many disease processes is moving forward very rapidly. But unfortunately, that information is coming from outside of medicine because of the structure of medicine is not conducive to finding solutions to problems, but rather managing those symptoms because the overlying philosophy is in medicine, yeah, even though we know there's a solution to the problem, people aren't going to do it anyway because they're going to eat what they're going to eat and they're going to do what they're going to do. And we may have been right about that for a while. But today is a new day, and I discovered through the last few years of my practice that there is an increasing and rapidly growing percentage of the population who is happy to take full responsibility for their own health. And many people are willing now today to change their diet, to change their lifestyle, to start paying attention to their emotional well-being because it's a big effector of their health. To recognize the fact that they are spiritual beings and that it's okay to talk about that and okay to say that the health of our spirit, our emotional health does in fact determine our physical health as well. And our physical health affects our emotional well being and our spiritual well being. All of these things are connected. And increasingly, it's becoming okay to talk about that, and so that's exactly what we're going to do in this practice, even though it wasn't okay in Western medicine. So, what I want to talk to you about today is an extension of the conversation that we had last week. And most of if you didn't listen to last week's podcast, most of it was a discussion about how I came to a personal understanding of the food that I loved eating, and that is dairy products. I love them. I love cheese, but cheese doesn't love me. And I didn't realize until quite late in my career, oh my, this food that we've been told is all good for us and sold to us and so forth, it really has some deleterious effects on our health that not a lot of people in medicine, in fact, nobody that I know of in medicine is talking about it. But there are more people who are coming forward all the time saying that we got a real problem with these dairy products. And actually, if you think about it, you look around in nature, and nature would suggest to us that drinking milk beyond being a baby is not really what the rest of the world does. The natural world, there isn't any animal on the planet. There's no mammal on the planet that drinks milk beyond infancy. And in fact, 6 to 8 or 9 months after that baby mammal is born, their mothers dry up. Okay, they don't. That food isn't even available to us. So in the natural world, it's gonna be hard for anybody to argue with me to say that, milk and dairy products, regardless of how wonderful they taste and how wonderful they are, and they are, I get it, okay? But the natural world would suggest to us that, no, that perhaps that's not something that we should be eating as adults. And, we discuss some of the reasons why that is, because physiologically it affects our immune system. There are immunoglobulins, or there are proteins in there that affect the immunoglobulins that live in our mucous membranes and cause them to coagulate and subsequently not work. And my experience was that when you withdraw those things from your diet, when you withdraw dairy products, 95% of which are A1 positive milk proteins, when you remove those from your diet, fantastic good things start happening with your health because you're allowing your secretory immunoglobulins, the secretory IgA that we have in our ears, nose, throat, and our lower urogenital tract. It actually allows it to work instead of interfering with it. So we're essentially eating food products that interfere with our immune system. Who in the world would do such a thing knowingly? Okay, well, now you know. And so, if you're having a problem with recurrent upper respiratory infections, recurrent lower, urogenital tract infections, if you have a problem with dairy products, maybe you should just lay them down and step away from them for a little while. I guarantee you, there isn't a single case documented in any of the literature I know I checked of anybody dying of a dairy deficiency. Ain't happened. Okay. And no, the number of problems that we could solve with with withdrawing those products from patients' diets was amazing. And I realize, I'm sorry, my message comes with a warning. I'm sorry if that's not very popular to say. I understand. However, if you're sick and don't know why, maybe you should withdraw those dairy products for a little while and see how you do. Okay, you're not going to die, promise you. Swear to you, you're not going to die without milk, cheese, ice cream, yogurt, sour cream, cream cheese, or any of a million processed food products that have dairy proteins in them. They very well may be causing you to be sick. So anyway, there's a long discussion about something that we already talked about last week. Here's a story for you that I had from residency, and this was really quite poignant. And I don't even realize why, or don't even know why I remember it. Maybe it's because it's a message that I have. But I can remember very vividly sitting in lecture after lecture during my residency while I was in Chicago. It's there's a part of our medical training where you work, essentially live and work in the hospitals. But we also had some pretty interesting discussions from oncologists, from hematologists, from cardiologists, pulmonologists, all these subspecialists that would talk to us about certain disease processes. They would put their pathology slides up on the overheads, and we would look at them. And over and over and over again, these guys were saying, look at this, look at this background of inflammatory cells, and there are certain plasma cells and white blood cells that were indicators, there were markers of chronic inflammation. And over and over and over again, they said, here we've got all this chronic inflammation in here. Inflammation is the key. These highly trained subspecialists are looking at these slides, and over and over again, we see a pattern of behavior that suggests that inflammation is the one ever present factor in a multitude of diseases, from autoimmune disease to cardiac disease to vascular disease to cancer to all of these vexing diseases that we have to deal with. Many of them what we call idiopathic diseases, but seem to have an association with inflammation. Nobody can figure out what the source of the inflammation was, and so I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Why are we not focused on where that inflammation is coming from if it seems to be the common figure in all of these disease processes? And the conclusion that I've come to is I think we know, but no, but the answer to that doesn't really contribute to the bottom line. And I know this from personal experience because when I found it and started addressing it, I immediately, over and over again, became really unwelcome in the medical crowd because I was solving problems that somebody else was being paid to manage. And it's kind of sad, but no, it's just the way it is. So if you're in medicine and you're really mad about me spilling the beans, come burn my house down. It's okay. But no, the point is that no, the truth is the truth, and everybody else in the world is starting to figure this stuff out. And the longer we suppress that truth, the lower our credibility as professionals is. And so I kind of got ahead of that in 2023. I just sent my license back, and I said, you know what, I don't no, I don't go along with this anymore. I had a clean medical license. There were no pending investigations. There were no lawsuits ever. There were no complaints that were pending and say, oh, well, if I just send my license back, maybe this will go away. No, I didn't have anything of that. I had a pristine medical license. And once I started to see what was going on, I said, you know what? No, I'm in all good conscience, I can't do this anymore. And so if I'm not welcome in the medical community for solving problems that somebody else is being paid to manage, so be it. We'll go teach it somewhere else and move on in the evolution of the planet, for crying out loud, our entire civilization. Because as long as we're sick, we can't move on, guys. No, we can't move on to spiritual enlightenment and expansive emotional well-being if you're sick all the time. Okay, so here's what I learned. I am absolutely convinced that no, that this fantastic world that we live in is no, is a beautiful symphony of no, of all kinds of no, of living creatures. There is no a symphony that does not have a conductor, and there is a conductor, and it is well organized. This giant ecosystem that we live in here on Earth, and it was designed to help us all. Okay, that includes you and me. But no, human beings have been walking the planet for quite some time now. It's not like just yesterday we dropped out of the sky. I mean, we've got recorded history that goes back, 10, 15, 20,000 years. It's pretty sketchy after a couple of thousand years ago, but no, but we have excellent archaeological evidence that that says that people have been walking the planet for several 100,000 years, maybe millions. Who knows? Okay, I'm not here to to get involved in that argument. But we have excellent evidence that says people have been here for a very, very long time, much longer than we realize. And so, let's just say that that people have been around for 100,000 years, or 300,000 years, or 400,000 years. Doesn't make any difference because the numbers all start to to look the same. The modern era where we have air conditioning and heating and cooling and tennis shoes and grocery stores around the corner has only been around for about 100 years or so. Okay. And prior to that, we had no refrigeration. We had none of the modern conveniences that that we all enjoy and likely would die without if the power went out for an extended period of time. And so the vast majority of human history, okay, let's say 100,000 years or 300,000 years, if modern history only goes back about 100 years or so, and having all of these wonderful conveniences and all these wonderful bits and pieces of food that we can bring in from all over the planet, if that's only been in place for about 100 years or so, what about all the rest of the of human history? And the rest of human history was fairly rough. Okay, it was hard scrabble life where people lived in caves and tents and all the rest of the stuff. They needed a little bit of help. Okay, they hadn't gotten to the point where they were masters of their own world here, where we could go to Antarctica or fly across the planet. These people hunted and fished and gathered and in later stages developed agriculture and so forth. But for the vast majority of human existence on this planet, 99,990 years, it's a pretty tough life. Okay, and the creator of our planet built in some mechanisms to help these people survive, and one of those mechanisms is called inflammation. Okay, when we cut ourselves, we induce an injury into our tissue. There's an inflammatory response that happens there. Blood flows in here. There's a whole bunch of chemicals that get released, chemical signals that get released to tell those blood vessels to dilate. That's why it gets red. It hurts. It gets tender, so we protect it. We don't rub dirt into it and so forth. And through that inflammatory process, it heals up that tissue, and the inflammatory process settles down, and we move on, and we're healed. Okay. There are other forms of inflammation as well. If we continue to irritate that tissue, let's say we create a wound here on my hand, and we just continue to rip it open, 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 and do that for years. We create a chronic wound there. And if you continue to irritate that tissue for years and years and years and years, and it continues to try and repair itself, eventually it loses its ability to control that cell cycle, and it will develop a cancer. Okay. One of my greatest instructors in my residency program, my residency director, Ed, he said he had this lady come in to his clinic. She was biting her lip over and over again. It was a nervous habit. She'd just sit here and do this all the time. And he told her, he said, you really need to, to get that, to get that habit under control. And he said, if you don't, you can actually cause a cancer to grow. 20 years later, same woman came into his office, big old ugly lesion on her lip. He biopsies it. Sure enough, it's a cancer. And she had irritated that tissue so long, and it had stayed in a chronic inflammatory response for so long. It was trying to heal, trying to heal, trying to heal, and eventually that tissue simply used up its ability to control that cell cycle. It lost control of the cell cycle, and she developed a cancer. He cut it out. She was fine, but no, but he tried to tell her 20 years before. We know that chronic inflammation causes cells to lose control of their cell cycle. So inflammation really is the key to understanding many different disease processes, including cancer. And so, uh, one of the other ways that we can experience inflammation in our body is, well, the food that we eat. And I discovered this in my own practice, because the most common patient that came through my door was what we call a globus patient, somebody who's feels like they have something stuck in their throat all the time. They cough, intermittently. They clear their throat all the time. They can't figure out what's going on. They're scared to death. They've got a cancer. They come in. We take a camera. We look down their throat. Everything looks fine, except there was a little bit of swelling right at the top of their esophagus. I would take my camera and push on the top of that esophagus, and they would say, "That's it, doc, right there. What is that? That's exactly where it is. What is that?" And I said, "It's nothing but the top of your esophagus, and it's just it's irritated. It's swollen. It's inflamed." And so we would treat them for reflux. Sometimes that would work, sometimes it wouldn't. We get them off of soda pop. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. And we just kind of work our way through a protocol. The first thing was to stop the soda pop. The second thing was to get them some reflux medications and help them understand what foods that they were eating that were contributing to their reflux problems. And when we had worked through that, then the next step was to find out if there was a food that they were eating that was causing this inflammatory response. And it is an unnamed response, because God knows if we name it, we actually have to recognize it as something to manage. That solves a lot of problems. Okay, and so what we would do in my clinic is start working our way through all of these things. The first thing that we would remove is milk and dairy products: milk, cheese, ice cream, yogurt, sour cream, cream cheese, blah blah blah. Anything that had milk proteins in it, especially if it was a processed food product. That solved a lot of problems, but not all of them. And then we would move on to nuts, peanuts, and cashews. And almonds with the skins on them are very common forms of inflammatory issues. And then we'd move on to grains and bread products and so forth, and pasta. And boy, that really made them mad. And I don't blame them. We eat all of these foods because they appeal to our mouths. And I'm the first guy in the world to say I love dairy products. Okay, I love cheese. I love cheese so much. I married a girl named Bree, named one of my kids Jack, and almost named my other kid Colby, for crying out loud. I love cheese. It hates me. And when I eat it, it makes me sick. And if you want to hear more about that, we talked about it in the last episode. But the point is that it is a very common issue, because it causes an inflammatory response that your body. This is the critical thing. This is what the whole episode is all about. Inflammation that is caused by the food that we're eating. We get a generalized inflammatory response, and it irritates different parts of our body. And systemic inflammation that comes from the food that we're eating is a signal to your body to store those calories as fat. Why would we do that? Well, remember the symphony that we were talking about, and the conductor that is conducting the symphony. Your creator created inflammation, and by the way, this is a very common pattern. We use the same system, the same concept in a myriad of different ways in a human body to do different things. Okay, in the human ear, we have hair cells that detect hearing. Those same hair cells in another orientation detect gravitational motion. Those same hair cells in another orientation detect rotational motion. So it is a very common pattern of behavior that the creator of this body would use a system or a piece of anatomy in multiple different ways to accomplish a different task. Inflammation in an acute injury, if we cut this, it is your best friend. Acute or systemic inflammation that is caused by food is also your friend, because it stimulates your body to store that energy as fat. Okay. In a baby, irritating that baby's body with milk proteins tells that baby's body to store that energy as fat. Why do we want fat babies? It's a survival response, guys. So fat babies live longer if their mother gets whacked. I mean, you all watch Bambi, right? Okay. What happened to Bambi's mom? She got whacked. Well, if Bambi's fat, Bambi has a better chance of surviving than if he were skinny. Okay. If you, Mr. Caveman, are out running around hitting things over the head with a rock and trying to survive, wouldn't it be useful if during certain times of the year, different food that you found did different things in your body? And in fact, that's exactly what we see. You see, the hardest time of the year for anybody to survive, if in fact you're a caveman, is winter. Not only winter, but late winter. Okay, it's cold. There's not a lot of food running around. The rivers are still frozen. It's tough. So what can you find? Well, wouldn't it be useful if there was a form of food that would stick up out of the snow and wave there in the wind at you, and that you understood, I can go up there and I can eat that. And in your body, what would you want it to do in your body? Would you want it to burn up those calories, or would you want it to irritate your body and tell your body to store this as fat so that you could survive until the birds came back, the rivers thawed out, and the berries started blooming? And that's in fact exactly what we see. Think about it from that perspective, my friends, and you will understand why grains of every form, which are grass plants, wheat, oats, barley, corn, all of these are grass plants. They grow relatively tall. They have a protein in that plant that's called lignin that causes that stem to be really stiff and it'll stick up out of the snow. Well, where are the seeds? They're up on top. Okay. Wheat, oats, barley, corn, all the rest of that stuff, it's sticking up out of the snow. And if that caveman is starving to death, he sees those seeds, he says, I can eat those. Then he pulls them off and he eats them, and sure enough, he can survive. And there's an additional benefit there that particular food product not only will nourish his body and give him the energy that he needs in order to survive, but also cause a systemic inflammatory response that tells his body, don't just burn this energy up, but store it as fat. Wouldn't that be a powerful survival mechanism? And it is. Here's the problem. Grain tastes good. There's a lot of things that we can do to it. We can grind it up, turn it into flour. We can make pasta out of it. We can make cookies, crackers, bread, all kinds of really awesome stuff that tastes really good. But you know what the problem is? It's survival food for a caveman, and it irritates your body, and it causes an intense inflammatory response. Dang it. Dang it. You're starting to see what I learned in what it took me 20 years to figure out in medicine, because they certainly do not teach this in medical, despite the fact that we have excellent bench evidence that heart disease is in fact reversible, not treatable, not stoppable, reversible with diet alone. And we've known about it since the 90s, guys. 90s. But even in medical school, they told us, nobody's going to eat like that because nobody's going to do that. So here's the drugs, and here's the surgery, and here's everything else that we do to treat heart disease. But we certainly aren't going to suggest that everybody start eating like a rabbit. Okay, that's the decision that medicine made. But I'm telling you, the inflammatory response that we get from eating survival food that was created for a caveman and created to help that caveman survive is hurting us today, because we simply don't recognize what that food product is doing in our bodies. Where are the common problems? Well, we already talked about one of them: dairy proteins, incredible problem. Grains of all forms. There's all kinds of people out there have been talking about this. The paleo people are famous for talking about it, saying, "Listen, get the grains out of your diet. It's not that that grain's going to kill you. today. It kills you real slow over time because that's the way your creator created the world and created you. It gave you every opportunity to survive as long as you possibly could to try and figure stuff out. Okay, well, we finally figured some things out. In fact, there's a whole bunch of people that have figured all this stuff out. One in particular, would love to get her on the program, and she is a researcher from the University of Iowa, who has published a book about the cure for MS. Did you know there's a cure for MS? Yes, multiple sclerosis. There is a cure, and she's published it. And maybe we can get her on here. But when you control the inflammatory response and understand the foods that were created on purpose with a purpose to cause an inflammatory response, which were useful for the caveman, but not useful for you today. Will they kill you right away? No. Will they kill you over time? Absolutely. Will they cause problems? Yes. Will they cause you to be fat? Yes. Will they give you reflux? Yes. Will they cause you to have autoimmune disease? Yes. Will they cause cancer? Yeah, at later stages. There's all kinds of problems that these things cause, but it all comes down to one thing: inflammation. Okay. And we've recognized for a very, very long time that that inflammation is key to understanding multiple disease processes. We just didn't ever want to get to the bottom of it, and this is where I shake my finger and accuse medicine of being exactly what it is, and that's a profit machine. And if we fail to bring this information to the public that is demanding it of us, our credibility is in the crapper, and it belongs there. Okay, so the next time that your doctor tells you, "Oh, inflammation has nothing to do with all this," obviously they weren't paying attention in residency. And you, my friends, the power is in you to experiment with all of these things. So what do? Number one, take the dairy out of your diet and see how you feel. If you feel better, great, leave it out, okay? Or add it back in and see how you feel. And then the second thing that you do is you start taking grains out of your diet. Take them all out for a little while, see how you feel. This is a cheap experiment. When you feel better, keep doing it, or put them back in and see how you feel after that. And then start understanding what it is that how it is that you feel when you put these products inside your body, and you'll start to recognize something. Oh, when I put these into my body, I feel like really heavy, like there's a rock in my gut. And in fact, that's exactly what you're feeling. That's what inflammatory foods feel like when you put them inside your body. The problem is, so many of us have been walking around for decades thinking, well, that's just what it feels like when I eat. No, it can be different. And that's one of the reasons why we've had such a hard time recognizing this and or getting our patients to make some very radical changes to their diet. But if you are the guy or a lady who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, you're sick and tired of having sick children, you're sick and tired of just being sick and tired, or you have autoimmune disease, if you've got a cancer diagnosis, if you've got chronic joint disease and all the rest of that stuff, then dig in. Okay. It may very well be the food that you're eating that is contributing significantly to the problems that you're having. And when you figure this out on your own, the light comes on, and all of a sudden, expansive well being and flourishing good health starts to pop through. And I have done my job. I have helped you unlock a life you love. That's my job. So we're going to leave it here. I promised everybody we'd try and keep these messages short. We'll try and bring some people on here to help illustrate the point a little bit better than what I have communicated here. But guys, the food that you put in your body is a big deal. The thoughts that you think are a big deal. Okay, don't let anybody tell you any different. No, but it is a very complicated, very difficult topic to introduce and to get on top of, and that's why we're introducing all of these concepts one little bite at a time, and giving people some suggestions as to where they can start and experiment on their own in a very safe environment. Nobody's going to die not eating bread. Nobody's going to die not eating pasta. Nobody's going to die not eating dairy products. Trust me. Nobody ever does that. Okay. So these are things that you can start experimenting with, and if you really want a good book to read, get a hold of Dr. Stephen Gundry's Plant Paradox book. It will open your eyes. It probably make you mad, and you'll look at that going, "Oh my gosh, no, this represents a radical change to my diet." However, not everybody's ready to do that, but there are more and more people all the time who are willing to embrace these things, to start working harder at taking much better care of themselves. Because let's just face it, the healthcare system in the United States is broken. It is very, very expensive, delivers relatively low quality, and it's up to you to take control of your own health. And the best advice that I can tell you today is don't get sick. Don't get sick. That may sound like a little oversimplification, but it really isn't. Your health is your business, and nobody in the world is cares any more about your health than you do. But the help is out there. The information is there. It may not be coming to you through standard medicine because it just doesn't fit their cash flow model. I know I'm that guy. My name's Dr. Tim Teel. This is the Unlock a Life You Love podcast. I'm going to shut her down. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your interest. I encourage you to do some experimentation. And I'll see you next week right here on the Unlock a Life You Love podcast. My name's Dr. Tim Teel. I am the Doc of Unlock. And we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.